Hello, BookTube. Let's chat about books a little, shall we? I have some to show you, including. We'll start with a few that I got at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston today. The first one being An American Year by Hal Borland, which is it's an old black and white. It's from I think the 1940s, the mid 1940s. Follows the year and it has black and white illustrations all throughout. It's every other page has a black and white illustration from a bunch of different artists and a bunch of different styles. And it just follows a year. It follows a year in a rural setting and talks all about it. And I of course, I immediately turned to July uh, and read July is not only a season of the year, it is a season of the mind and memory. Hot days and sultry nights and crashing thunderstorms are part of July, and to the drone of the bees in the clover fields will soon be added the high-pitched sibilance of the cicada. The tang of ripe cherries and the sweetness of sunning hay belong to July, and so does the cool splash of flowing water where country boys go to swim when corn hoeing and garden weeding has been half finished. Orioles sing in the apple orchard, and robins greet the sunrise, and in the evening there is the sweet sadness of the doves and the soft swish of their whistling wings. Uh, and I grabbed the thing because the Brattle has outdoor sale carts, and there's been on and off rain. It poured rain here yesterday, and the morning was on and off rain. And I think the carts were caught in a downpour. And this thing, I think, was one of the books that was caught in a downpour. So it was. I had credit, and it was only $1. And it's a book that it's an author who I love, and I confess I got it for two reasons. One, uh, just to read right through it because I don't think I've read this book by him, and two, to see what I could do with it, see whether or not I could save this thing. Uh, I will report back. But Hal Borland is a fantastic author. I believe he's now completely out of print. He's also an incredibly sweet man. Um, he did Hal Borland's Book of Days. He did uh, a great dog book. He did a book called Country Editor's Boy, which is just a slice of life memoir about a world that doesn't exist anymore. Just he's a wonderful, wonderful writer. Someone you can really just curl up with, on a hammock or on a porch, and just enjoy the heck out of. So I was happy to see this, even though it was only $1 and it was credit, so it wasn't cash. And I was happy to grab it, even though I'm not sure that I will actually keep it. That's one of the horrible temptations of really cheap books. Is it may be that this time I'm going to do my best to save this thing, but it may be that this time tomorrow it's got mold growing on it. And it has to be thrown away because mold will jump from book to book. But you never know. And then the next two are very similar things. I found them right next to each other. I had to get them both. They're both tiny hardcovers about Venice, which those of you who've been watching this channel for any length of time will know is my second favorite place on earth. One of the only cities other than Boston with which I have fallen completely in love. And the first book is something I had a long time ago. Venice is a Fish. This is by Tiziano Scarpa, who is a Venetian himself. And this came out in 2008, in the very infancy of Open Letters Monthly, the online literary journal, where I am the managing editor. And we ran a review of it there, and I read it, and it's a tiny little thing. I loved it, and then, like so many other books over the years, it just disappeared. So I was happy to find it again, because Venice books are a dime a dozen, but the ones that stick with you and are really good, there aren't so many. And same thing with this next one, Watermark, by Joseph Brodsky. This is very, very. I like the design. I remember the book too. I remember when it originally came out. When was this? 1992. He fell in love with Venice as well, and this book is a series of very short meditations on different things, different parts of Venice. Really criminal in a way that an author could just toss off something like this and get paid for it. But if you're Brodsky, then the publishers will be justified in doing that. And I wanted to read you a bit of this as well because he's just so good. Uh, in winter, you wake up in this city, especially on Sundays, to the chiming of its innumerable bells, as though behind your gauze curtains a gigantic china tea set were vibrating on a silver tray in the pearl gray sky. You fling the window open, and the room is instantly flooded with this outer peel-laden haze, which is part damp oxygen, part coffee and prayers. No matter what sort of pills or how many you've got to swallow this morning, you feel it's not over for you yet. No matter, by the same token, how autonomous you are, how much you've been betrayed, how thorough and dispiriting is your self-knowledge, you assume there is still hope for you, or at least a future. Hope, said Francis Bacon, is a good breakfast, but a bad supper. it's a even a little glimpse like that is classic Brodsky. He's a bit of a drip. He's a bit of a deadpan author, and you think, oh my God, this is the worst company in the world. And then all of a sudden, he'll give you a glint of pure beauty in prose, or a very mordant Russian wit that just redeems everything. So those were three gems that I found at the Brattle. One that I might not be able to save. Two that will go right up on the shelf. And then I've got a little mail haul, the books that were waiting for me when I got back. So I thought we'd do those as well, just combine the two of them. Another hybrid book haul. So what have we got here? What is this first one? Oh, fantastic. Great. This is Anne Applebaum. This is her new book, Red Famine, about Stalin's the famine that Stalin inflicted on Ukraine. Anne Applebaum did a book on the Gulag system that was universally lauded. she was just got praised everywhere, which is great. She's really, really good. And this comes out in October. And let's see here. In 1929, Stalin launched his policy of agricultural collectivism, in effect a second Russian Revolution, which forced millions of peasants off their land and onto collective farms. The result was a catastrophic famine, the most lethal in European history. At least 5 million people died between 1931 and 1933 in the USSR. But instead of sending relief, the Soviet state made use of the catastrophe to rid itself of a political problem. In Red Famine, Anne Applebaum argues that more than 3 million of those dead Ukrainians who perished not because they were accidental victims of bad policy, but because the state deliberately sought to kill them. And this is going to get reviewed everywhere, even in, we've mentioned before on this channel that 2017 is a year that is absolutely saturated with Russia books. And it's true, and probably a lot of book editors are out there, like for instance 3 of my book editors are all having somewhat similar thoughts, which is, we really don't want to overdo this. We don't want to try readers' patience with too much Russia. But nevertheless, a really good book section will also be a reflection of the publishing environment of the time. And if a first-rate author comes along with a book, it's a hard argument to make to avoid it. So it's entirely possible that come October I may review this somewhere. I will certainly review it for Open Letters Monthly if I don't, but it's entirely possible. I mean, I think for the Christian Science Monitor, I've done 2 Russian books so far, I think. By October, we could easily do a third. But anyway, let's move on. That's a very good start. Real history by a very good historian. That's a real good start. So what is this next one? Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, my. This is from 7th Street Books. They do murder mysteries and stuff like that. This comes out in November. The tagline, you're gonna love it, book 2. A career homicide detective returns to his small hometown and is soon asked to investigate a series of local murders with a perverse literary twist. And that part's underlined. A perverse literary twist. Detective Joe Preach Everson, a prison chaplain turned police officer, is coming home. After a decade tracking down killers in Atlanta with a reputation as one of the finest homicide detectives in the city, his career derailed. Okay. His career doesn't have that reputation. He does. He has both a reputation and a career. His career derailed when he suffered a mental breakdown during the investigation of a serial killer who was targeting children. No sooner does Preach arrive at home in Creekville, North Carolina, a bohemian community near Chapel Hill, Then a local bookstore owner is brutally killed, the first murder in a decade. The only officer with homicide experience, Preach is assigned to the case and makes a shocking discovery. The bookstore owner has been murdered in exactly the same manner as the pawnbroker in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. Don't tell me we're going to get a serial killer who's on BookTube. With the help of Ariana Hale, a law student and bibliophile who knew the victim, I'm glad she's helping. I'm also glad for something else that isn't mentioned here and that is as absolutely certain as the sun rising in the morning, which is that Ariana Hale is astonishingly beautiful. Preach investigates the local writers' community. As their questions increase, a second body is found, this time eerily resembling the crime scene in a famous Edgar Allan Poe novella. Preach and Ariana realize their adversary is an intelligent, literate killer with a mind as devious as it is disturbed. Hasn't anybody seen Adam at Memento Mori lately? Check South Carolina. And one or both of them may be his next target. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm all on board with this thing. Of course, I will read it. A killer following literature. I can just picture Preach and Ariana at a crime scene. Oh, I don't know. Looks like this poor guy, what a mess. Looks like he was bored to death. Like in Cormac McCarthy. Of course I will read this. And I know that murder mysteries are a weak spot. They're the Achilles tendon of fiction. But you can already tell a lot of things about this book that aren't in that summary, but that cannot not happen. Preach and Ariana will end up in bed together. If not in this book, then wide open teased for the next one. There's no chance that they will simply be colleagues. That simply won't happen. And also, that serial killer back in Atlanta who was preying on children, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that those murders will be connected to these. Crazy. It doesn't happen that way. Of course, serial killers who mimic murder scenes from books don't happen that way either. But even given that, even suspending your disbelief that far, you're going to have to suspend it even more because they will end up being connected. Because fiction is just the art and science of tying things up in neat little. Okay, all right. Well, the book's called "Written in Blood" by Leighton Green. And there's a bookstore shelf in the background. Oh my god! All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next one. Let's kind of hope for a little balance here. Maybe history. History would be nice. Oh, all right. Asked and answered. There we go. This is the finished copy of a work of history. It comes out on August 1st. I will be reviewing it for Open Letters. It's called Love, Madness, and Scandal by Joanna Luffman. And it's the life of Frances Coate Villiers, Viscountess Purbeck. Let me give you a bit here. As a teenager, she was forced into politically convenient marriage to the brother of the king's favorite. She separated from her husband and became the central figure in a notorious scandal at the court of King James VI and I, taking a lover, becoming pregnant, and giving birth to an illegitimate child. Frances paid a heavy price for her illicit love. Her powerful brother-in-law, the Duke of Buckingham, had her tried and convicted of adultery, but Frances fought back. Her incredible story includes madness, smallpox, secret trysts, court dramas, kidnappings, prison breaks, cross-dressing, a high-speed chase, murder accusations, kings and queens, exile in France, a convent stay, revenge, and involvement in civil war. Try topping that on your channel. that description, Viscountess Purbeck, is a little charged. The story that this author has to tell of this character's life story is extremely dreary. that makes it sound like it's just one rollicking adventure after another, but in fact, her life was miserable, and the reading of the book. The author does a very good job. She for stretches lapses into jargon, into academies, and also there's a lot of anachronistic feminist shadings, that a lot of things like that simply they're simply imported, they're simply tacked on to the telling of the story. They wouldn't have occurred to anyone actually in the story. Uh, but despite those things, it's a very engaging book and kind of short. Uh, but it can try all it wants. It can't make that story that I just read out of her actual life. Her actual life was just a if you were to take a camera and then take a complicated, delicate toy and toss it into a pen full of dogs, outdoor dogs, and watch what they do to it over the course of an hour or two. If you're not paying attention to the dogs, if you're just paying attention to the thing, you will see that it's up and down, it's moving all around, it's covering all kinds of area, it's changing shape. But you pull back a little and you realize, well, okay, it's a toy being torn to rags by things that have complete power over it. I'm never really sure about the origin of such things. I have a suspicion always that their origin is ultimately academic. That it's either a doctoral thesis or the latest thing you're working on. Then you've got a department chair who's watching to see whether or not you publish, that sort of thing. I mean, it's great for her that she's at Oxford University Press. Doesn't get any better than that. Let's see. She's the associate professor of history at the University of North Georgia. Originally from Sweden, she studied and worked in the United States since the early 1990s, receiving her doctorate from Emory University in Atlanta, where there's a serial killer stalking children. Her work focuses on the Tudor and Stuart eras, specifically on issues of love, sex, and marriage. And, okay, that's great. That's fantastic. So what I'd really like, not that anybody's asking me for advice, but what I'd really like after this, I mean, this is a great showing. $30 hardcover from Oxford. That's fantastic. It'll get reviewed. It got reviewed in the TLS. It'll get reviewed elsewhere, I'm sure. All the trade magazines, I will review it. But what I'd really like after this is a little bit less special pleading, a little bit less insider baseball. How about a big narrative work? That's what I would like. And the author could certainly pull it off. There are long stretches in that book where you know she could do that. But anyway, we're on to the last one. We'll see what this is. What is this last one? Could go either way. Oh, okay. This is Border, A Journey to the Edge of Europe by Kapka Kasabova. Let's see here. Have we seen this before? I could swear I've seen this before. In Border, an extraordinary work of narrative reportage, Kapka Kasabova returns to her home country of Bulgaria and embarks on a journey along the border it shares with Turkey and Greece. I'm sure we've seen this before. Or I've talked about it with someone else before, who also didn't want to hear about it. Capturing the ancient history of the border zone shaped by the Soviet and Ottoman empires, Kasabova tells the astounding stories of those she meets along the way. Border guards, mountain villagers, firewalkers, entrepreneurs, smugglers, mystic healers, and migrants. Interesting. Okay. And of course the author doesn't live there anymore. She lives in Scotland like civilized people do. So this comes out in September, and this looks like a trade paperback original. Yes, it is. Okay. It's a trade paperback original. It's rather lovely too. You can't tell on camera. There's a nice textured feel to it. And it's going to be $16. Interesting. Okay. All right. So there you go. So we've got Border. We've got Love, Marriage, and Scandal. We've got Written in Blood, a bookish murder mystery. We've got Red Famine by the great Anne Applebaum. And then we've got 2 books on Venice, Watermark, and Venice is a Fish. Finishing up with An American Year by Hal Borland, a great natural history writer that you should all find. If you can find a copy of any of his books for 5 cents online, go ahead and splurge. You have my permission. I'm going to see if I can fix this book, if I can dry it out and you know, clean it up and see if I can keep it. If not, I'll find another copy. The Brattle will provide. But oh my God, we've reached 20 minutes, and I'll sign off for now. See you soon, BookTube. Thank you.